The third annual Climate Finance Day is underway in Paris, bringing together world leaders to increase the financial industry's role in the global fight against climate change. Ban Ki-moon pushed the issue of climate change to the forefront of the global policy agenda, making it a pillar of his tenure as the 8th Secretary General of the United Nations, a position he held until last year. He joins us now from Paris. Mr. Secretary General, great to have you on the show. Thank you so much for coming in. The expectation after President Trump withdrew the U.S. from the Paris Climate Agreement was that cities, states, the private sector would continue with their efforts. How much momentum are you seeing in Paris, and will that be enough to offset losing the U.S.?
This is quite timely convening of international conference on climate change after a second anniversary of this Paris Climate Change Agreement. I applaud President Macron, who is going to convene this one together with the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres and also World Bank Group President Jim Yong Kim. This should be a venue and occasion to reaffirm their strong commitment to bring and mobilize necessary financial support for developing countries. It is important that the world leaders agree on a formula to mobilize at least $100 billion by 2020 to help developing countries adapt and mitigate climate change consequences. At the same time, we should mobilize all capital markets and institutional investors and public and international globalized managed banks to provide the necessary and financial support for infrastructure, which should be eco-friendly and climate resilient. And I sincerely hope that this One Planet Summit to be held from tomorrow will really accelerate and revitalize the strong commitment which was shown 2 years ago. There is no time to waste, and I'm going to urge world leaders. Yes.
Secretary Ban, I mean, this really was your project. You really were behind this 100%. You enlisted, frankly, our boss, Michael Bloomberg, as one of your envoys to really get COP21 done. One of the aspects of this was a regular accounting of the countries about how we were doing, whether we were making the progress we'd committed to. As you look at it now, 2 years in, are we on track for what you had expected at this point?
We were excited when we were able to agree on Paris Climate Change Agreement 2 years ago, but we cannot stay on like this way. We have to accelerate our commitment. In that regard, I appreciate Mayor Michael Bloomberg, who has been working as UN Secretary General's special envoy, mobilizing all the cities around the world to make their cities eco-friendly and climate resilient. While I am deeply concerned about what Donald Trump, U.S. President, has announced to withdraw from Paris Agreement, at the same time, there is some moment for optimism. I am encouraged by groundswell support from the grassroots of the American people, including major states like California, Washington, and Oregon, and Massachusetts, who are joining in this campaign to implement climate change agreement. More than 200, as I understand, major U.S. cities and more than 1,000 major business CEOs are in this process. And having organized, we are still in campaign. And this is a source of optimism. But at the same time, whole world's people, and particularly world leaders, they should send a strong message to world leaders as well as the people to make our economic operations more eco-friendly.
President Trump also sending a strong message when he recognized Jerusalem as the capital of Israel and planning to move their embassies there. We just heard from the U.S. ambassador to the UN, Nikki Haley, talk on Fox News yesterday about how Israel bashing in the UN Security Council has been a problem. How do you respond to that?
It's not Israeli bashing. as a former Secretary General who had been working very hard to really facilitate the two-state solutions, and also as now a member of the elders of the world, now I'm joining whole world's voices that this issue should be settled between Israelis and Palestinians. I have been urging Prime Minister Netanyahu and also President Abbas to agree on the solutions so that there should be two states, Israelis and Palestinians, living side by side in peace and harmony and in security. Prime Minister Netanyahu and the U.S. President must have been hearing all the voices from around the world, including European Union and many, not to mention Arab countries, and all the people around the world are really hoping that this should be negotiated, the settlement.
Secretary Bond, finally, let's go back to your home country, South Korea. North Korea has been very much an issue globally over these last few months. As you look at the situation with North Korea, what is the path? Is there a path, actually, to peace with North Korea that does not include an nuclear armament in North Korea?
I believe that there is a possibility of addressing this issue through dialogue in a peaceful way. We've been hearing many concerning statements like accidental warfare or preemptive strikes. But all these military solutions will not be working, will not be sustainable. Therefore, it is important that, however, we have been very much concerned and deeply concerned about what North Koreans have been doing, it seems to me that the North Koreans may be looking for a way for a solution through dialogue. At the same time, I'm urging the people to read carefully the underlying message of President Trump and U.S. administration. My interpretation is that their message is also for peaceful solution rather than military solution. Military solution can easily be initiated, but it is never sustainable, as we have seen in many different cases in Afghanistan, Iraq, and Syria, and elsewhere. Therefore, I'm urging peaceful solution. The president of South Korea, Moon Jae-in, is going to visit China, and I sincerely hope that they will be able to find out some common strategy how to resolve this issue in a peaceful way.
Mr. Secretary, the first time that I ever met you was more than a decade ago, and that was when the six-party nuclear talks were still ongoing. When you're talking about a peaceful solution, are we talking about a multilateral framework, a bilateral framework? Will it be U.S., North Korea, and China? Just shortly, if you can.
There may be many different means. Most ideally, it should be between South and North Korea, but we may also expect that North Korea, United States, or China, North Korea, China, United States, all these functions, political functions, can be applied all together or separately. So we must mobilize all the tools and effective means of communications and cooperation with each other.
Why isn't China doing more?
I met the Chinese President Xi Jinping last month as a part of former presidents and former heads of state of government. Now, he also assured that the Chinese government will be faithfully implementing the relevant Security Council resolutions over North Korean sanctions, and as a neighboring country also who is taking overwhelming share of North Korea's trade, external trade, China can still be the only country who can really play a decisive and overwhelming role. So we really count on a Chinese continuing engagement.
Mr. Secretary, thank you so much for your time out of Paris. Ban Ki-moon, former UN Secretary General from Paris, where he is attending this year's Climate Finance Day.